Hi everyone. Welcome to the final session of the January Health Reset, How to Supercharge Your Brain. My name's Miranda Levy. I'm a senior health features writer here at The Telegraph, and I'm the author of the book, The Insomnia Diaries, How I Learned to Sleep Again. So to finish off the series, I'm delighted to be joined by Professor James Goodwin. James is the Director of the Science and Research Impact at the Brain Health Network, and he's a visiting professor in the Physiology of Ageing at Loughborough University. He's also the author of a brilliant new book, Supercharge Your Brain, How to Maintain a Healthy Brain Throughout Your Life. So this evening, we're going to be discussing the effects of the pandemic period on our cognitive health, and how we can reverse the damage by any harmful effects with simple lifestyle changes. So now let me please extend a warm welcome to James.
Hello. Thank you very much,
James.
Miranda. Hello.
So I think we'll just start off with sort of a general comment, really, and I'm going to just ask an open question. What would you say that the pandemic period, the lockdowns and the restrictions, has done to our brains?
I've answered this question many times, Miranda, and my answer never varies. What I've said is, if you ask me to devise a plan to damage the nation's health, I've come up with lockdown. I think the damage that has been done to people's health, outside of the effects that it may have had on COVID, will be profound, and they will be long-standing. And over the years, we'll find out exactly what the health cost has been. Already we know that the waiting lists of the National Health Service have gone up to about 5 million, and some have projected it'll go up to 14 million. These are unheard of figures. And one of the reasons is because the NHS largely became the COVID health service. And I don't want to dwell on that area of my answer too long, but in terms of what it did, without doubt, it socially isolated millions of people. And we know from biology that no social animal ever does well if it's isolated, and that applies to humans. We're social animals. We have social cognition, that is our capability to interact with other people, embedded in our brains for 1.5 million years. And why? Because it's a survival skill. If we don't mix with others, and if we didn't in the past mix with others during our evolutionary history, humans would never have survived. So when that feeling of loneliness comes on, that's the warning light in the dashboard. No different to hunger or thirst. Let me tell you of a study.
I read the most,
Yes.
so if I could say, I read the most extraordinary thing, I think it was in your book. You said loneliness ages us as badly as 15 cigarettes a day or drinking a bottle of gin. I mean, can you explain that a bit?
Loneliness poses as great a risk to our health and to our longevity as 15 cigarettes a day and a bottle of whiskey a day. I mean, some people...
That's quite a statement.
It is. And what's the reason? The reason is that it's inflammatory. Loneliness sets up the stress mechanisms in the body. There are 3 of them: the immune system, 2 in the nervous system, 1 short term, 1 long term. Some of the listeners and viewers will know this as flight or fight, but there's also the longer acting mechanisms in the nervous system which produce cortisol and the stress hormones. What that does is massively raise inflammation in the body. Now, inflammation is the assassin of brain health. It's also a proxy for aging. So as we age, as we go from our 20s to 30s into our 50s and 60s, inflammation in the body is rising. If we have chronic long-term illnesses like obesity or diabetes type 2 or COPD, inflammation gets worse. Loneliness is just a synergist for that. It puts its foot on the pedal, and the old inflammatory markers go right through the ceiling. That is why it is so dangerous. I just wonder if anybody, I'm going to be critical now, I just wonder if anybody in SAGE knows this and if they came to any conclusions over it. There's also the effect on our mental health. Now, I'm not an expert on mental health, but of the 3 parts of brain health, emotional regulation, that's balancing our negative and positive emotions, is absolutely critical. And we know that over the pandemic, there's been a vast increase. I think the prevalence of depression has doubled, and 1 in 5 people who've had COVID have had a clinical diagnosis of anxiety. So that the whole thing has not been very good, Miranda.
No, however, I understand it's not too late. Even though what we've been through, there are things we can do, whatever age we are, practical things that people can do to stop or even reverse this trend. So if I could ask you to maybe pick, to start with, maybe 3 practical things that people could go away with and do, you know, immediately after this conversation ends.
I will pick 3 of them, but it's worth saying at the outset that across the course of our life, it's never too late to take the step. So it doesn't matter whether you're in your 20s or 30s, or whether you're in your 60s or 70s, it's never too late. And of these simple practical things, DNA is only 25% to blame for the change in our thinking skills across the course of our life. Wow, that's a finding. And that was a British finding.
So positive. That's so optimistic. That's such an optimistic thing.
So to get into the answer, 75% of how our brain health changes across our life is down to the things we do and the things in our environment. And I'll pick 3. A really brilliant one is exercise. Now, it isn't what you think. Exercise is a 2-sided coin. On the one hand, you've got exercise where you go out and you do your 150 minutes a week of aerobic training. Right? Those are recommendations. And that's immensely beneficial to the brain. How does that work? Because as we exercise, the muscles start to produce hormones and proteins which travel to the brain and start its rejuvenation. It provokes something called neurogenesis. Now, that's another fabulous scientific finding. 3 years ago, it was discovered for the first time that the brain produces new brain cells every decade of our life, right the way up to our 90s. That was the University of Madrid. So as we're exercising, we're reinforcing that natural process.
So when you're talking about exercise, what should people do? I mean, it's not just about going for a couch to 10K, is it? There's all sorts of things people can do at whatever age.
Yeah, there is. I mean, very, very loosely, the Department of Health recommendations say that there should be aerobic training, which is walking, jogging, cycling, swimming, any sport, any activity that you can do that can be loosely termed as a sporting type activity is what they mean. Add to that resistance training. So certainly over the age of 50, you should be doing things with weights. That might mean going to a gym, or it might just be doing things in your own home, your gym at home. But that's only one side of the coin. The other side of the coin is this. 2005, James Levy at the Mayo Clinic in the United States found that even if you exercised for your 30 minutes a day or whatever it is, if you sat down for more than 8 hours, you undermine the benefits of that exercise. That is just another tremendous finding. So you can't exercise your way out of being a couch potato as far as the brain is concerned. It just won't work. Exercise is not an antidote to smoking. It's not an antidote to being a couch potato. So what we have to do is have an active lifestyle as well as exercise. Now, you can overdo it on exercise. And we know that if you really push the limits, as athletes do, their immunity and their immune system actually starts to degrade. That's because you're sucking all the life out of the body by pushing it to its limits and draining all the energy out of it. But if you're restrained and you do something you enjoy, that's the thing. It's got to be enjoyable. And reference our social capacity in our brain. Why don't we do it in pairs, in threes, in a group? That is a really great way to do it. So
walking the dog, gardening, all those kinds of things, they count, don't they?
Yeah, they do count. Anything to raise your heart rate. They say you should have your heart rate 70% of your max. How do you calculate your max? It's 220 minus your age. That's how you calculate your max. So my maximum heart rate, this is a clue, is 150. So I should do 70% of that. So I should be on about 100, no more than about 130. My maths is right. Goodness. So that's what you should be doing. And if you do that for 30 minutes, 5 days a week, you've cracked your 150 minutes of exercise. And as well as build up your somatic or your bodily fitness, you've done the brain a power of good. See that
I
we
love
evolved as
something.
hunter-gatherers. That's and movement, prolonged movement over many days is how they did it, and then they rested and digested, and then it was activity again, and they rested and digested.
I love the way you sum it up very succinctly in an article you wrote for us recently. You said, declare war on the chair, which I think is a lovely way of putting it.
I did say that, and look, everything we do is sitting down. Almost everything we do. Everyone's sitting down now. Raise your hands, all those who are standing up watching this presentation. There'll be very few people who are standing. We sit down, it's comfortable. It doesn't place work demands on the body. And we sit down to get to work, and we sit down when we're at work, unless you're in an occupation that requires you to move around. What is
Exactly.
it? 60? Yeah.
Or if you finished working, if you've retired.
Yeah, sure.
So that's exercise, which I think is fascinating. And I think a lot of people still think that doing puzzles and things is better for their brain health than exercise, but actually moving around is the best thing, is it not?
It is. I mean, I'd have lots of things to say about the mental activity we can do as well as the physical activity. But you want three, don't you? You want my golden three. So you want two.
Well, maybe we can stretch it, but let's start with the three big ones. So exercise is a main one. What else would you suggest?
I would say diet. And it isn't what you think. It isn't swallowing hundreds of supplements, turning your hard-earned money into highly expensive urine. That isn't really what it's all about. We have a very, very narrow diet. The Western diet, 75% of it comes from 5 animals and 12 plants. I was astonished when I realized that. And in 1850, in Covent Garden or in the Manhattan fruit and vegetable markets, there were 300 apples for sale, 300 kinds of apples. So we've gone from a hugely diverse diet, which we had as Neolithic times, even hunter-gatherer times, 300 kinds of plant food, to that. It's no wonder that people feel the need to take supplements. And there are what I call the big five. And the big five are 5 nutrients which we're all short of in the Western world, which are vital to the brain. It just defies description, really. The first one is vitamin B12. Vitamin B12 is responsible for the speed of processing in our brains. I recently introduced an American friend of mine, actually in Palm Beach, to Marmite. Right, rather stunning response. Yeah, Marmite. Why? Because Marmite is a fabulous source of vitamin B12. And it's really in short supply in the natural world. It's mostly found in animal products. The other one is vitamin D. Now, that's the only vitamin that we make, and we make it through the skin because of the incidence of sunlight. Well, you need 5 30-minute periods of really good sunlight a week in order to make enough vitamin D. So if you're above latitude 40, as we are, or below 40 south, as many people are, then you've got no chance really in the winter of producing enough vitamin D. And that's another scarce food product. It's mostly found in animal products. It is found in mushrooms, but to get the recommended daily allowance of vitamin D from mushrooms, you have to eat 1.5 kilos a day. I've done the maths on this. I know people will be shaking their heads. I've done the maths on this. 1.5 kilos a day, and all of that is vitamin D2, and it's hard if you cook them. So you've really got to... Vitamin
so where
D.
do you get your vitamin D from?
Well, I know I was hammering supplements, but I actually do supplement in the winter. I actually do. The problem with supplements is that they're unnatural. I once, in the US, again, I saw adverts for there's a bottle of fruit and there's a bottle of vegetables. And they had a woman in her 70s saying, I lived on a farm, we ate fruit and vegetables every day. Now I just take these. I mean, I'm hard on supplements, and so is the Global Council on Brain Health. But some things you do have to take a supplement.
So you suggest
vitamin
vitamin
D
D supplement.
Vitamin D.
Is there an amount that you recommend people take?
Yes, there is. I think it's 25 micrograms a day, so not very much.
Okay.
So
so we've talked,
and the supplement providers, they've got it worked out. So you know they'll they'll tell you what the daily dose is for most people. The problem is there's a U-shaped curve for supplements. They do a little bit of good, and then if you take too much, they do you damage, and then they do damage after that. So
we've
yes, go on.
Sorry, vitamin D. No, I'm just keen that we cover all five.
All five. Okay.
The next one I think you've mentioned.
The next one I choose is omega-3 fatty acids. Now, as hunter-gatherers, 1.5 million years ago, the amount of omega-6 and omega-3 fatty acids in our diet was about level, like that. Okay, that's 3 and that's 6. Do you know what it is now? It's 20 parts of 6 in our normal diet to 1 part of omega-3. We've got to get that ratio down. And why is it 20 to 1? Because we eat so much prepared food and ready meals, takeaways, convenience foods, pizzas, and all this stuff. They're full of plant oils, and plant oils are very, very high in omega-6. So don't get me wrong, you need omega-6 in the diet, but you don't need it 20 to 1. You need it about 1 to 1. In fact, if you can put the omega-3 higher than the omega-6, you're going to do your brain a whole load of good. Let me just give you a statistic. 80% of the brain is water. If you get all the water out of the brain and you look at the real stuff that's left, 60% is fat. And of that 60% of fat, most of it's omega-3. You really need that omega-3 in order to produce good brain health. Now, the other two, sorry, go on.
No, it's exactly what I was going to ask you.
The other two are magnesium and zinc, and they're both in short supply. Now, most of magnesium, meat is very rich. Meat and fish are very rich in magnesium, but so are plants if they grow them on the right soil. It's soil dependent. And you've got to look very, very carefully at the fruits, the seeds, the vegetables, and everything else that you eat. And don't get me wrong, we need to eat that Mediterranean diet with low meat and fish and high plants and vegetables. But you've got to make sure that the stuff you're eating is plentiful in magnesium. Magnesium is so good for the brain that Pfizer are in the process of producing a magnesium pill for brain health. It's in production. The other one is zinc. Well, the same thing. Zinc is plentiful in meat and fish, and then you've got to choose carefully your fruits and vegetables in order to get that right balance. But those are the big five. But overall, I'd say to the listeners, it's the diversity of the diet that matters. Eat widely, as many kinds of fruits and vegetables. Don't stick to that narrow Western diet that we have. Diversity is hugely important. I don't know where I'd get 300 different kinds of plant food. But since I did all the work on it for my book and really, really looked at it, I've really started to widen my diet now. In the US, a friend of mine there took me to Whole Foods. What a place. They boasted that they had 20 they boasted they had 20 different kind of apples, because I was about to take them to task over it. So how many apples have you got on your produce department? And he said, we're more than most, we've got 20 kinds of apples. So Whole Foods, that kind of thing, really, really great for variety.
So here's a question that I think lots of people would like to know the answer to, because you read conflicting things all the time. Should you cut out all alcohol from your diet, or is a glass of wine every now and then fine for your brain health?
There are two sides to the evidence. Some evidence says that alcohol is bad for the brain. I think what they mean is excessive alcohol is bad for the brain. And that's one reason why the lockdown was pretty bad, because alcohol sales, apparently, resale sales of alcohol, you couldn't go down to the pub. So what did people do?
Yeah.
Drank at home. Right. So excessive alcohol is definitely bad for the brain, and it dehydrates the brain. I mentioned earlier that the brain is 80% water. 1 glass an hour, that's what we should be doing. 1 glass of water an hour. It could be ionized water like Kangen water. That's a little machine you buy, and all health facilities, all by regulation in Japan, all use ionized water because it's microcluster that penetrates the brain. So excessive alcohol, not really a good idea. But if you drink moderately, there is There is evidence, and the anti-alcohol drink people who've got an agenda, the alcohol health freaks about, will try to minimize this. But actually, there's evidence to show that moderate alcohol is beneficial to the brain. Certainly, I read a paper in my book that it benefits the transmission of the signals through the brain in white matter. The problem is, what's moderate drinking?
That was my next question.
Yeah, it varies on your build, your size, and your gender. But these are the rules I have for myself. I never have more than 2 drinks a night unless it's a special occasion, because one special occasion is not going to wreck your brain health. It's not a single thing you do. It's the single things you do every day across your life. So celebrating occasionally and going over the top, unless it's stupidly over the top, it's not bad for you. It's good for your quality of life. But generally, I don't have more than 2 drinks in a night. I never drink 2 nights in succession, because you've got to give the brain and the liver and the kidneys and your physiology generally a time to recover from that. So those are the rules I have. And when I'm drinking, if I'm on the whiskey, keep swallowing the water. Should get it down to 3%. 3% alcohol ingestion. So keep drinking that water and it'll go down.
Okay. I mean, I think that's interesting. I think a lot of people will be quite happy to hear that they can have the odd glass.
Well, I hope they
you
are.
You have to enjoy your life, okay? Surely that enhances. It's all about quality as well as.
I'm going to get emailed from the health agenda people. That you're giving out the wrong messages. I've read the evidence, and the evidence is that if you're balanced in the amount of alcohol you drink, then it is not that detrimental to the brain. It's if you pickle your brain. And pickling the body in alcohol, especially for men for reproductive reasons, is a bad idea. It's one of the things that the physiology of the body doesn't forgive. If you're a young man and you're constantly soaked in alcohol, you're going to suffer later in your reproductive life, no question about that. I sit on a scientific board in Harley Street for a men's health charity, the Andropause Society, and I've talked to them about it. One of the main reasons for reproductive failure later in life, and we're getting off things now in men, it is soaking their reproductive organs, or the whole of the body for that matter, and the brain, because, as I'll say later, sex is good for the brain.
Yes,
so alcohol is good, but not.
Why don't we talk about that? Why don't we talk about that now? A neat little segue.
Now, that was one of the knockout things that I discovered as I was searching the literature. And it started in Princeton, probably I think it was in the 1990s, where 2 researchers were looking at reproductive behavior in rats and the relationship to their behavior. And what they found was that if a male was put into a female's cage and she was receptive, no male refused the opportunity, even though it was stressful. And when they looked at their brains, the rats were sacrificed. Some went like this, but the rats were sacrificed. They looked at euthanasia. They looked at their brains, and they found that those rats who'd had sex versus those who didn't had got better neurogenesis. So then they looked at what happens if you put the male in with the female regularly, and it wasn't stressed out. So the first occasion, both of them were stressed out. After that, stress levels went down. And then when they looked at their brains, they rejuvenated their brains by regular sex with a familiar partner. Now, you might say, well, we're not rats. Okay, go to Australia, and there's a professor there called Mark Allen. And when was it? 2018, he looked at a huge sample of 6,000 people over the age of 50. And he looked at their sexual behavior. And what he found was, all those who had regular sex with a partner they loved doubled, no, got it wrong, 20% improved in memory. 20%. And then, of course, that kicked off a whole load of research. And they found out that the same principle, regular sex in a close relationship, is immensely good for your mathematical ability, for your visuospatial ability, for your use of words, for your vocabulary, for just goes on. And I was completely knocked out by that. It appears that there is benefit from sex with not a regular partner, but the benefits tail off quite quite significant.
I see. Well, that's one to think about.
That really isn't one of my
So
big
if I
three.
No, well, it's no. So let's talk then to something not unrelated, but potentially is routines and sleep. Now, a
Yeah.
lot of people's sleep changed in the pandemic, didn't it? Their rhythms changed. What effect do you think that had on us?
Well, in the last section of my book, The Eulogy, I put if people asked me what were the big three, I would come up with sleep. And actually, it isn't sleep; it's your biological rhythms.
Right.
So, the reason why we sleep badly in the Western world is because we've got a 24-hour society with blue light in our eyes all the time. Well, in the natural world, as we evolved, the brain encountered blue light early in the morning, and that was the signal to the sleep centers to increase the level of arousal, so we woke up. And during the course of the day, as the blue light increased, then our activity increased. And that's true from 6 in the morning till about 12. Mental and physical activity for most people naturally increases. And then it fluctuates during the day. And then as we go towards the sunset, because of the angle of the sun on the atmosphere, red light is the predominant light. So what do? Turn all the lights on. And then we take our laptops and we take these things, our mobile phones, to bed with us. We read late into the night, and we've got artificial lights on. We're putting blue light into the eyes all the time. And this is all contrary to natural behavior. I remember Nick Zuzler, who was the NASA advisor for sleep, was on one of the Global Council Brain Health meetings. And he told me this great story where he went to an Amazon tribe in Brazil, and he was talking to them about their sleep. And they said, "Oh, we all sleep in the roundhouse. The whole family, grandparents, grandchildren, we're all in there. There's probably 12 to 20 people in there." So he said, well, what happens in the night when the children get up and people start moving about and go? And she said, "I don't understand your question." And the interpreter had to ask it 3 different ways before she got it. It was beyond her experience. Nobody got up. Why? Because they regulated their day according to the rhythms of light in the natural world. I'd recommend to everybody, first thing in the morning, just go outside and doesn't matter if it's the winter, right? Winter or any season, go outside, walk a little bit, or go around the garden or anything else. Get that light into your eye, and that will sink in your natural rhythms. See, the natural rhythm in the brain is 25 hours. It's not 24. That just happens with the world, and nature is 25. We don't understand that. The biology of sleep is not understood.
Really?
The physiology is. No, the biology we don't understand.
That is interesting.
It is interesting. A famous scientist said that if there wasn't any biological benefits to sleep, it's the biggest mistake that evolution ever made. Right? But we haven't worked out what it was. It's just there. And so tune in your 25. Sorry.
There's something you said in your book which I found really interesting. You said older people still need 7 to 8 hours a night within a 24-hour period, but you don't need to do this all in one go. Then you've qualified that with afternoon naps of no more than an hour are to be encouraged. So can you go into that a little bit, please?
Yes, I will. The precise algorithm, if you like, that was concluded by the Global Council on Brain Health was across our lives, we need 7 to 8 hours of sleep in every 24-hour period. That's what they said. Now, that doesn't mean that the nature of sleep doesn't change. The nature of sleep does change. It's more difficult to go down as we get older. It's easier to come out. And the cycles don't repeat themselves as regularly. So you have to manage your sleep better. One of the big signals to drive the brain to sleep, as well as the rhythm in the brain, is a chemical in the body called adenosine. And that rises. And that's driving us to feel sleepy. So if you sleep for too long in the day, you drive it through the floor, and there isn't any at night to make you feel sleepy. So you've got to be careful. If you put serious Zeds out and for 2 hours, 3 hours in the afternoon, then when it's nighttime, that chemical signal is low, and you're struggling to sleep, and you can't sleep, so you stay up longer, and then you're tired in the middle of the day, so the whole thing goes down into
a vicious circle, isn't it?
Yeah.
Okay. No, I mean, I find that
no caffeine after lunchtime is another big one for me. No, well, I would say don't push it. I mean, some sleep experts say no caffeine after 10 a.m. Well, forget that, right? I'm sure many people drink coffee all day, and big individual differences. Some people say, I go to sleep on coffee. Well, that's great.
About tea? What about tea?
It's the caffeine in the drink that's the important thing, and there's half the caffeine in tea that there is in coffee. So if you have 2 cups of coffee at lunchtime, not difficult, you've got 100 milligrams of caffeine in the blood. By the time it comes to 10 o'clock at night, you've halved it. So that's quite enough to keep you awake. So don't push it on the coffee into the afternoon and the evening. As a general rule.
So are there any other, what are your rules about, when you should finish eating before bed? I mean, because there is talk of a certain window in which it's best to eat.
Yeah,
I mean, do you have any views on that?
I do. Eating food is inflammatory. It's also essential. You've got to eat food. So I restrict my eating time from 8 in the morning till 8 at night. That's it. Probably, according to the science, I should narrow it to more than that. And that's a form of intermittent fasting. So what happens is you don't eat then from 8 in the evening until 8 the next morning. That's a long time. And that reduces the inflammation in the body. And also, the body runs out of glucose, so it goes onto this stuff called ketones. It's just another carbon atom like glucose, but it's more difficult to break down. Now, producing ketones is natural. And we eat all the time, and we snack all the time, and we have a late night snack, and we have a snack in the early hours of the morning, and we're never in ketosis. And we're never natural, because what's natural is not to eat for long periods of time. That's how we were. Right. Now, I'm not a doctor, so if you're going to make radical changes to your exercise or your nutrition, your diet, and everything else, you must talk to a doctor first, especially if you've got chronic long-term illnesses. So I'm not advising that we have this blanket approach, but as a general rule, intermittent fasting is not a bad idea, and it certainly reduces inflammation in the body. And as I said earlier, inflammation is the assassin of brain health. Ramp up the inflammation, your trajectory throughout your life is going to be that rather than that.
Yeah, I think that's very interesting. Would you be okay if we go to some questions? We've had so many questions through from readers.
Sure, yeah. So do I have to press this thing on my screen and get the question?
No, I can read them out to you. I can read them out to you. So quite a few people have asked about dementia. If there's been a family history, sure, or if there's anything that you can actually do to minimize your risk. I was wondering if you had any thoughts on that.
Yeah. Both my parents died of dementia. My father of vascular dementia, my mother of Alzheimer's disease, but they both died of it. And actually, notwithstanding COVID, brain health is still the leading cause of death in Britain. COVID is number 3. Okay, it goes brain, heart, COVID, 1, 2, 3. That's how it goes. Now, we can slow down dementia, and 40% it is estimated of all diagnoses of dementia can be prevented. And that was a paper produced probably a couple of years ago now by Jill Livingstone in University College London. She listed 12 things. If you're going to push me to remember all 12, I may not. But for example, hearing loss. Hearing loss is a big one. You have to remember some of these studies tell you what is good to prevent dementia or what contributes towards prevention, but we don't completely understand the mechanism. We don't completely understand the mechanism of many of the brain diseases, and there are thousands of neurological diseases, and there are no cures. There are treatments, but there are no cures, and we haven't really got a treatment for Alzheimer's disease yet. But there's hope. 40% of all diagnoses can be prevented. Now, if you have dementia in your family, should you be worried? Well, there is there is a thing called familial dementia, which does increase your risk if it's carried across the generation from one family to another. And there is a gene, an allele. A gene is made of two parts, one from your mother, one from your father. Right, those are the two alleles that make up the gene. APOE4 is one gene with two alleles, and it's got three forms. So there's APOE number 2, number 3, and number 4. So you could have 3 and 4 from mother and father, or you could have 4 and 4 from mother and father, or you could have 2 and 2 from mother and father. If you got 4 and 4 over 80 years of age, then 50% of all people with 4 and 4, both alleles, right, have dementia. But only 50% haven't. Amazingly, if you've got 2 and 2, it's protective against dementia.
So what can you do? What can you do if you're concerned? What practical things? I mean, is it kind of applying the things we've already been talking about mainly?
Yes, it is absolutely. The reason why Age UK and AARP in the United States formed the Global Council for Brain Health, because everybody was concentrating on disease and illness and sickness. The Association of Medical Research Charities, 200 charities, Parkinson's, diabetes, Alzheimer's Society, Alzheimer's Research Trust, Parkinson's Society. Global Council on Brain Health wanted to concentrate on keeping your brain healthy. So I would say you've got a very good chance of putting your boot on the throat of aging and brain aging and slowing it right down by using these preventative strategies that we know. And I've mentioned them already: exercise, diet, your social life, your sexual activity, and your management of stress. They're the really big ones. And it's all in my book, Miranda.
well, yes, but we're here now, so we're here now. I have to say, a really lovely question has popped up actually from Anthony, and I'm going to read this out because I think I've certainly experienced this, and I think a lot of people will have done in this period. And he said, may I ask, I've noticed during the lockdown period, I've been remembering people and places from many decades ago. This appears to be a common thing at present, as many of my friends and acquaintances are experiencing the same sensation. Why has this occurred? There's a kind of nostalgia thing, isn't there? People have really reliving school days and earlier in their life. I don't know if there's a scientific reason behind this.
Well, I think there are explanations. One of them is we've had more time during COVID because many people have been at home for longer, and you're missing people. So you've got the time, and also you've got the focus, the direction to think about other people. And that is probably why we're remembering more about people and places. I don't know that there's a physiological explanation for that. One of the great mysteries of science is, how do we go from our knowledge of the chemistry in the brain to thinking E equals MC squared, or to going into language, or to creating music? We don't know. We haven't yet put that together. The foundation of one of the brain institutes in the United States said we barely understand the brain of a worm. We've got 86 billion brain cells. Some of them have got 20,000 connections. And if you put all those connections together, they go to the moon and back. There's vast volumes of science we do not know about the brain, but it's going up like that. It's not going up in a straight line all the time.
So I think a nice thing actually we've got 5 more minutes, but to come towards the end, and we've talked about, some of the negative things that have happened during lockdown, and things that we can fix, for example, with sleep and diet and exercise. Are there any sort of good things we think we could have picked up during the pandemic that going forwards we could take with us to, for the rest of our lives? So so everyone can take something positive out of this for keeping themselves young.
Yeah, I speak for myself, Miranda, and I might be speaking for many in the audience as well. Being locked down in your house is such a dire experience. I couldn't wait to get outside. and have my exercise. And actually, like many other people, I stretch the elastic on it. So I'd go out and run. And I'm 72, right? So I still go out and run my 30 minutes 5 times a week. Right? So I went out, but then I also took the dog out as well. So if anybody asked me what I was doing out and running, I'm exercising. If anybody asked me what I was doing taking the dog, I was exercising. And many people will have found probably they did go to that as well.
So it's making a conscious decision to continue applying things when maybe you don't have as much time as you did.
Yeah, I think
that's true.
Yeah, lockdown has been such a dire experience for many people, and it's also been compounded by the anxiety that being locked down produces. I don't want to go into my family stories, but they're appalling, some of them. And I'm sure that many, many people, and I mentioned, Miranda, before the start of the programme, since my article in the Daily Telegraph, I've had 3 heartbreaking, sobbing emails from people desperate for help because of the damage that it's done to them. And I've replied to them. One of them came back in even more tears and said, "Oh, no one's been able to help me." And thank goodness you replied. Well, I think I have a duty to reply, to be frank.
So, well, I think this shows the importance of social connections, right? And maybe even if they're not seeing people, even an email to someone or a Zoom or a phone call.
Absolutely right.
I mean, are they almost as good, those things, would you say?
Yeah, social interaction of any kind is going to mitigate your social isolation. So I'm sure this has been happening. Email people, text people, phone people, Zoom people, even write letters. I'm old-fashioned a bit sometimes. I've even written the odd letter. Give me an excuse to go out and post it.
And I also think I've read that the small interactions count. So even talking to the person who makes your coffee or the person who delivers your parcel, that is almost as good for you as seeing a really old friend.
That was research. That was wonderful research out of the University of Essex. I can't remember the researcher's name. I know her personally. Her first name is Jill, and she produces marvelous research. The little things of life matter. Saying hello to the person passing you in your road, talking to your neighbour, the simple courtesies of please and thank you, just those little interactions, they alleviate social distance. Just those little things. Doesn't have to. So. Yeah, super.
I'm really aware of that kind of thing now, and I get a lot of pleasure out of those. People that in little interactions that you wouldn't have set much store by before. And I think that's something possibly positive that's come out of all of this.
Well, one of the reasons I enjoy going to the United States is I know people sometimes say it's a retail thing, have a good day and all this business. But people over there, they're friendly. The Americans are friendly people, and you get this easy banter between people all the time. And we're not bad at it, the Brits. We're not as po-faced.
I think we're getting better at it. Yeah. I think we are.
Exactly.
So on that positive note, I think we'll probably draw things to a conclusion. So I'd like to thank you, James, for joining me and to the audience for watching. James's book, look out for it. It's marvellous. And that's pretty much it. So this is wrapping up the series. I hope everybody that has enjoyed it and managed to take some interesting and useful tips along with you into the new year. So, James, I want to say thank you again. It's been a really lovely 45 minutes.
It's been a privilege and a pleasure. Thank you.
And good night to everybody.